You've probably heard of the Battle of Badr, right? It's famous for its military outcome. But today, we're going to look at it from a completely different angle. Not as a battlefield, but as a classroom. A place where, right in the middle of a crisis, some of the most profound lessons on faith weren't just taught, they were lived. Let's dive in. So we're going to explore how these moments of intense human emotion, we're talking everything from a mother's grief to a warrior's total devotion, were transformed into timeless lessons. We'll look at the promise of paradise, what true faith really means, the power of spiritual bonds, and even a father-son race for the ultimate prize. And then we'll tie it all together to understand the incredible teaching method at play. So here's the big idea we're diving into. Moments of extreme pressure, they aren't just things you have to survive. They're actually opportunities. Opportunities for incredible clarity, for faith to be forged in fire, and for lessons to be imprinted not just on your mind, but on your very soul. And that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. I mean, think about it. Is a lesson truly learned when you just hear it, or is it when you live it? Well, the events at Badr seem to scream that the real answer lies in the experience, where divine revelation met human reality head-on. All right, so let's jump into our first story. And it starts with one of the most powerful and universal human emotions there is, a mother's grief. A young man, Haritha, was one of the first to be killed at Badr, and his mother's heart was just shattered with this desperate uncertainty. She goes to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, with this raw, honest plea. I mean, her words tell you everything. Her heart is right on a knife's edge between this unbearable grief and just a sliver of hopeful patience. Her entire world in that moment hinged on the answer to one single question. Where is my son now? Now, this is where it gets really powerful. How does the prophet respond? He doesn't just offer some simple, empty condolences. No, he anchors his answer in a divine reality, a reality revealed right in the Quran. He connects her very personal, very painful tragedy to a universal, eternal truth about what martyrdom actually is. So here's the lesson. He completely elevated her perspective. He reframed death not as an ending, but as a beginning, a transition to a higher, more real life. By telling her that her son had achieved Jannat al-Firdaus, the absolute highest level of paradise, he transformed her grief into a source of patience and even pride. This wasn't just comfort. This was a profound re-education on reality itself. Okay, let's switch gears to our next story, and you'll see how these ideas build on each other. This one's about a warrior named Auf, who had a totally different kind of question. He wasn't looking for comfort. He was asking how to get to the absolute highest level of God's pleasure. So Auf asks the prophet, what makes the Lord laugh with pleasure at his slave? And the answer was to plunge right into the enemy ranks without any armor. This perfectly illustrates the choice he was facing. Do you rely on the physical protection of this world, or do you show complete, total trust in the divine assurance of the next? And this idea connects right into this powerful concept from the Quran. This idea that a believer's life is basically a transaction with God. You sell your temporary life, your temporary possessions, in exchange for the ultimate, eternal reward, paradise. And get this, Auf's response was immediate. As soon as he heard the answer, he threw off his armor, charged into the fight, and fought until he was killed. In doing so, he became a living, breathing embodiment of this Quranic verse. He literally took off his worldly armor to prove his absolute faith. It was a lesson acted out for everyone to see. Now, this next one, this one is probably the most emotionally complex moment we'll look at. It's about a man named Abu Hudhaifah, a deeply committed Muslim, watching as the body of his own father, who died fighting against the Muslims, is being dealt with after the battle. The source material is just so vivid here. I mean, you can almost feel his pain. The prophet notices the sadness on his face. This isn't a look of victory or triumph. It's the natural human sorrow of a son for his father, no matter the circumstances. And once again, watch what the prophet does. He turns to divine guidance to navigate this really tricky emotional situation. This verse from the Quran lays down a crystal clear principle. Your ultimate loyalty and love belong to God. That spiritual bond has to come first, even before the closest family ties. But just look at the masterful lesson here. The prophet didn't scold him for being sad. He didn't say, you shouldn't feel that way. He validated it. He actually said, it looks like it hurts you to see what is happening to your father. He acknowledged the human emotion. But then he gently guided him, explaining the principle of spiritual loyalty and even prayed for him. The lesson is so key. Faith doesn't erase our humanity.
It refines it and points it in the right direction.
All right, for our last story, we're talking about a competition. But this isn't for money or status or bragging rights. This was a father and a son, literally competing with each other for the chance to sacrifice their lives for their faith. So, you've got this father and son, Sa'd ibn Khaithamah and his dad, and they both desperately want to go fight at Badr, but one of them had to stay behind to take care of the family. So they decided to draw lots to see who would get the honor of going. And the son, Sa'd, won. The father, absolutely heartbroken, makes this deeply emotional plea to his son. He asks him to give up his spot, appealing to his sense of duty, his love. He's basically saying, "Let me have this chance at martyrdom instead of you." And Sa'd's reply is, wow. It's just incredible. It is so full of respect and love, but it's also completely firm. He makes it clear that the prize they're competing for is so huge, it's paradise itself, that he simply can't give it away, not even to his own father who he loves. And you see, this whole personal family drama, it's a perfect real-life picture of a direct command right from the Quran to race, to compete with each other in seeking God's forgiveness and paradise. They weren't just having an argument, they were living out this verse. So it's the big takeaway here. The Prophet had nurtured a community where the ultimate ambition, the biggest prize you could ever win, was the hereafter. This story showed everyone that real competition wasn't about worldly stuff, but about who could do more good, who could sacrifice more. And in the end, Sa'd went to Badr and was martyred, winning the very prize he was racing for. Okay, so we've just walked through these 4 incredible stories. Stories of grief, devotion, loyalty, and ambition. So what does it all add up to? When you look at them together, a really clear pattern begins to emerge. It's really a 4-step process. First, you validate the real human experience, the grief, the sadness, the desire for more. You acknowledge it's real. Second, you anchor that experience in the bedrock of divine revelation, the Quran. Third, you use that anchor to elevate the person's perspective, to help them see their situation not just from a temporary point of view, but from an eternal one. And finally, by doing all that, you reinforce the timeless truths of the faith, making them absolutely unforgettable. And that really leaves us with a huge question to think about, doesn't it? The companions at Badr, they didn't just get lectures on patience or sacrifice or loyalty. They lived these lessons in the most intense, high-stakes moments of their lives. And it raises the question for all of us. What's the real difference between just knowing something is true and living it so deeply that it becomes a part of who you are?